Hello, hello, welcome. I'm Amanda, founder of Sober and Beyond. And I thought it'd be really fun for us to hop on a live stream. I just came from facilitating a group meeting at a rehab, and I thought we could also share the lesson here. And while my work at the rehab, we is with people with addictions, I also do my other work with the family members and loved ones of addicts. So, of course, this extends to everyone, but my channel here at Sober and Beyond is more specific to the family members and loved ones. What did we talk about today? Well, today we talked about a behavioral model about relapse. And I think this is important for both sides to completely understand. I started with some stats in the group today. Now, these stats are from NIDA, which is the National Institute on Drug Abuse. Now, it's important to know that the first year of sobriety, addicts are most susceptible to relapse. And we can break this down by substance. Opioids, there's a 95% chance of relapse in the first year. 95%. That's a huge percentage. Alcohol is 80% in the first year, and that goes up to 90% in the first 4 years. So actually, the longer they've been sober with alcohol, the higher the risk factor of relapse is. Certain stimulants, such we can say methamphetamines or cocaine, those have a 60% relapse rate in the first year. And like alcohol, it actually increases within the first 5 years. That relapse rate goes up to 75%. And then marijuana, that one is 71% in the first 6 months. So we didn't even take a year study on that one. That is 6 months, 71% chance of a relapse. I think these statistics, whether you are into stats or not, they're very important because they do indicate patterns. And what we can see is if we're taking opioids, there's a 95% chance of relapse. I personally don't know, have never heard of someone with an addiction who has never relapsed. Never heard of it, never came across it. I also asked the group today if they had ever come across someone who has never relapsed. There were probably about 30, 35 people in the group. No one in the group had ever come across someone who has not relapsed. And I think that this conversation, it's really good to broaden it because it's so widespread and it's almost guaranteed that they're going to relapse. And as the family members, that's very frustrating because when your loved one goes into treatment, you think it's all over. You can go back to your life as it was before. You can relax. The problems, the struggles, they're over. However, when they enter recovery or treatment, that's just the beginning. And I think as family members, we misunderstand that. And that causes us a lot of turmoil and heartbreak when it doesn't unfold the way we imagine it should or would. So if we take this model, behavioral model that I have, and this model was created in the 80s by Dr. Alan Marlatt, and the model differentiates between a lapse and a relapse. And the difference is a lapse is a very short, quick, one time, maybe one day, one weekend return to usage. Whereas a relapse is defined as long term, kind of weeks, months, years, decades return to substances. And for this model, it's very important to differentiate the two because in this model, he's going to outline why there's a difference. What are the factors that make it different? So, Dr. Marlott, he likes to promote the fact that relapsing or lapsing is not a failure. It's a process. And it's not a one-time spur of the moment instant thing that happened. A sequence of events occurred and then there was a return to usage. And I think sometimes addicts think that, oh, I was tempted with drugs and I just grabbed it. There were other things going on in the background that led them to using because everything that they learn and build in rehab, they're stronger than just immediately folding when presented with an opportunity. So there were other things that kind of dampened them or weakened them before they got to that stage of using. What are some of the factors? According to Dr. Marlott's model, high risk situations. So this could be people, places, things, offers, such as that. Coping skills. Are the coping skills adequate? Beliefs and thoughts. So, what the person believes about themselves and their internal dialogue, what's going on with that. Emotional states, if they're dysregulated, if they're anxious, if they're stressed. And also, social environment. Are they isolated? Do they have a community? Things of that nature. Now, like I said, there's a chain of events that occurred before any return to usage. Okay. I'm using my exact paper that I used in the group today. Okay, so what is the process of the relapse? So the process is first, there's a person, place, or emotional state that triggers the rest. So it really starts with our environment. And that's going to be the base of the model where it all starts in the environment. Who are they around? What are they doing? What's happening in the environment? That's key. So something is happening in the environment. Oops, excuse me. Let's see. Right. And then, oh, it could also be part of the environment as within our emotional state. There's boredom, there's stress, there's being lonely, maybe feeling a little isolated. Those factor in and are considered high risk situations. So the next flow in the relapse process are coping skills. To what extent, what level is this person implementing coping skills? Do they have a diverse toolkit of coping skills? Because journaling is great, but we're not going to be able to journal at a party when somebody's offering us a beer, for example. So they have to have a diverse kit of coping skills and they have to also understand what suits me in each particular circumstance. And that is something they have to experiment with and play around with. And they have to be kind of facing some of those situations to fully understand what works best for them. And according to Dr. Marlott's model here, relapse is highly probable if the coping skills are not implemented or if they're not adequate. And of course, the opposite is true. If they have great coping skills, if they're confident in themselves and their abilities, they're less likely to relapse or lapse if we're using the model. The next sequence in this flow of relapse are triggers and thoughts. And let me tell you something. Thoughts are very creepy. Not creepy like weird, but they creep in. And I'm sure you've experienced dark thoughts or thoughts that kind of sway you to do the opposite of what you're trying to do. Even if, say, if we're on a diet, there's gonna be this thought that's like, go get that cookie. Like, it's just one, you deserve it. You've worked really hard. You've put in so much effort for a whole week, didn't skip a day at the gym. Just go have a cookie. That's our reward. And it's something similar with substances where they rationalize it to themselves. Just have a beer. You've worked so hard. Look at all this effort you put into sobriety. You deserve a dang beer at the end of the day. And those are the thoughts that creep in and sway them into returning to their old behaviors. And other examples of that would be I can handle it. I can just have one. I know of one person in the meetings that in the past where they said they rationalized just having one beer and they even decided to have a light beer thinking that that's even better. I can have a beer and if it's light, it's really nothing. So it's quite interesting how we persuade ourselves to do things that are detrimental to us or oppose where we're trying to go, what our goals are. And it's the same with addicts, except with addicts, it's much stronger than your desire to have a cookie. It would probably say it's almost 100 times stronger than that desire. The next part of the relapse process is something called outcome expectancies. This is when we expect the return to usage to give us something. So, for example, if I have a drink, I'll be less anxious. I'll be more social at the party. I'll be more fun. They'll see the fun version of me. I'll make friends. And it could also be it'll help me relax, it'll reduce my anxiety, it'll make me feel less alone. So we expect that using will have a benefit. There's a positive outcome to using. And the more positive we believe this outcome to be on returning to substance, the more likely the individual is to relapse or lapse because they're kind of idolizing it. They're fantasizing in their head about it a little bit. And then the next step in this flow is the actual usage. So we're actually going to be returning to the substance or behaviors if it's behavioral addiction. And according to the model, the lapse would be a slip. One time use, one day, one weekend, very short term usage. Now, what happens at this moment is very critical because if we lapse, we use, and then we interpret that as failure, there's going to be a higher risk that the lapse actually turns into a full-blown relapse and it becomes long-term. So it's interesting that how critical we are with ourselves determines. Let's see. Right. So if they're like, I blew it, I might as well go all the way. I did it. I might as well have a whole week with it. That's very common. Okay. So the next determiner of the model here is self efficacy. So this is belief in self. This is, do we believe that we're capable of being sober? I can get through this without using. I'm capable of a sober lifestyle, things of that nature. I believe in myself. I can do this. If there's a high level of belief in oneself, then they're more likely to quickly recover from their misstep. If they start sinking into the darkness, I'm a loser, I'm a failure, I'm messed up, might as well just go hardcore, then they're less likely to quickly recover or quickly get themselves back in alignment. So that's basically the flow. And the thought process is to analyze what happened in the situation. So there's a high risk situation. And if we have positive coping skills, we implement those. And then we have increased self efficacy. I believe in myself. I can rebound. I can get back on track. That leads to the decreased chance of both lapse and relapse versus high risk situation. We have ineffective or non existent coping skills, or maybe coping skills that don't apply to the situation. That leads to decreased self efficacy. So we don't really believe in ourselves because we don't have the evidence, we don't have the coping skills, and we kind of know we can't handle the situation. And our thoughts are going to start creeping in on that, which is then going to lead us to the lapse and an increased likelihood that the lapse turns into a full blown return to usage, calling it a. Now, according to this model, how are we breaking the cycle? Well, the number one thing is awareness. So there's 4 ways to break the cycle, 4 things, 4 factors that we need. Self-awareness is number 1. We have to understand what happened, what's going on with us, what do we need, where are the gaps. Self-awareness is very important during recovery. And then number 2 are coping strategies. We have to have a full toolbox of skills and coping methods that we can implement. And the more variety that there is in the coping skills, the more likelihood we're going to be successful. That one didn't work. Okay, that's fine. Let me try this one. Oh, that one didn't work. Fine. Let me go to the third one. They're more able to be flexible. Whereas if they're not diverse in coping skills, they have 1 or 2. Say the first one didn't work. Second one also didn't work. They're like, I don't know. I'm done. I got nothing else. That's it. So they're more likely just to give up. The third factor to help break the cycle are support systems. So I'm sure as family members, you've heard about sponsors, be sponsors, sober buddies, therapists, any kind of accountability partner. They have to have support systems, and that includes going to a meeting because that's part of support systems for 12 steps. The fourth is having a non-judgmental mindset. And as we mentioned earlier, how we feel about what just happened determines how quickly we bounce back from it. If we get down on ourselves about having that cookie, we might be like, you know what? Screw it. I had a cookie. I'm going to have a cheat meal. I'm going to have a cheat weekend. Let's just go all out. I'll restart on Monday. It's very similar to that. Whereas if you have this mindset of just had a cookie, not a big deal. I'm not shifting anything, ending anything. We're getting right back on. We had a cookie, fine. And if I want to eat anything else, I'm going to eat a salad. So there's a huge difference in the mindset, and it's very similar with substances and addiction. And the model really hones in on the fact that these small decisions that individuals make are the most important. Where are you placing yourself? Who are you around? What activities are you doing? Do you respond when you're being triggered? Are you calling? Are you checking in? Are we being actively participating in sobriety? And those are through the little choices: going to a meeting, calling the sponsor, going for a walk, doing meditation, those tiny things that we take 3 to 15 minutes. Those are determining factors for success rates. But like we know, the little things add up and they do matter. And also, what's interesting on this model is we want to include listening to types of music, watching movies or shows, especially ones that glorify drug use or glorify a particular lifestyle. It's very important that we understand I think here's the thing, it's easy to downplay a movie, Breaking Bad, let's say. It's idolizing a type of lifestyle and making it digestible for people who have never even engaged in that lifestyle. And we can imagine what kind of psychological influence that has on people who have experienced that lifestyle. It glorifies it, it brings back memories, it makes them forget about all the awful things that happen and become biased and hyper fixate on all the great things that happen. Oh, the women, the money, the power, the whatever it is. You can expand on that. So, part of that is the types of media that we're digesting. And as a family member and loved one of an addict, it's very important to be diligent of that and to not undermine or diminish things. It's just music. It's my favorite artist. It's not a big deal. It's just a show. Everyone has watched Breaking Bad. It's what's the big deal? It's really important that we don't demean or undermine the influence that these things have on our loved ones. And if you really want to watch that show, watch it alone and pick something else you can watch together. That's if you love someone, you should be able and willing to make adjustments for that person if you truly want them to succeed. You also have to partake. Let's see. Okay. And the next part of Dr. Marlotte's model is coping with the lapse. So remember, this is the determining factor. Is this lapse going to spiral into relapse or are we going to quickly recover? And it's just going to be a lapse. So in that, it's making sure we're not overly judgmental of ourselves. It happened, not a big deal. We bounce back. Like the cookie example. We ate a cookie, big deal. We're going right back to the salad. We are not having a full-blown cheat day, cheat weekend, and restarting on Monday. We're getting right back on right now. And then also making sure that we call someone immediately. As soon as it happens, we immediately jump on the phone, whether that's a sponsor, an old treatment center that you were at, a therapist, a friend. You want to immediately jump on the phone with someone. And of course, what's important is reflection after a relapse. And a lot of addicts, because I see it a lot, they go through the program, they graduate, and then they relapse and they come back. And it's this cycle. And they'll come back several times or they'll be there for long stints of time. And sometimes they get upset when they're asked this question. So what happened? What happened? And they get defensive. Well, what do you think happened? I used. Unfortunately, it can never be as simple as like, yeah, I used. Like, that's why I'm here. We have to dissect it. We have to reflect on it. What was the sequence of events? Where did I misstep? Did I let my thoughts spiral and get away and I didn't call them out? Did I stop going to meetings? Did I lose contact with my sponsor? Whatever it is, there was a sequence of things that happened. And it's important to reflect on that so that we have more self-awareness, yes, but also so we can fill gaps. And that's what I always tell them is the whole point in the reflection is to fill the gap. Yeah, I screwed up and messed up, obviously. Where were the gaps? Because if you can identify where the gaps are, we can spend this next stint in rehab strengthening the gaps. We can hyperfixate right there and build you up so you're super solid. But the only way we can do that is if each person takes the time to actually reflect on what happened. And of course, that's going to be uncomfortable because we don't want to sit there and be like, I ate a cookie. I ate a cookie. Why'd I eat a cookie? I had a thought about a cookie. I had a craving and then I was weak and I gave in. And it doesn't make us feel good to reflect on our failures, our slip ups. But I think the best way to manage that is realizing that the reflection is not to highlight that you messed up. The reflection is to highlight where we need to do more work. And that's it. And of course, getting right back on track and not giving up. We want to get right back in there. And I told them in the meeting today, one of my favorite, all time favorite songs is Frank Sinatra, That's Life. I love that song. I will just put that on if I need a little boost. And if you've heard that song, it's just, I'm doing amazing in April. May was awful. I was on my face in May. And June, I got right back up and got back in there. It's just, this is the cycle of life. We're going to mess up. We're going to fall. We're going to fail. Everyone fails. It's not, you can't avoid failure, but the winners are the ones who get up after the failure and get right back in there. That is the only thing that differentiates the winners is they get back in there and they keep going. Okay, so some tools, really good tools, according to Dr. Marlotte's model, is having a call list, having a list of supportive people we can call. And this is more than just a sponsor because sometimes the sponsor is not going to answer. They're going to be busy or, they could be in the shower and you're calling them in an emergency. They're not going to see it until you've already decided if you return to usage or not. So having a list of people helps us when, especially in emergency situations, when an addict needs someone right away. Distracting activities, walking, journaling, listening to calming music, breathing techniques, meditation, having certain activities they can do to distract themselves. Because say you wanted that cookie and instead you delayed it and you went for a 20-minute walk and you got back home with a little more clarity and space and you decided, what? I don't actually even want that anymore. Sometimes we just need a little space. And also having a daily recovery routine. When someone is in rehab or even inpatient or outpatient, their life is very confined. Inpatient is very confined, outpatient a little less. But after the outpatient, they fully reintegrate with the world. And life gets busy. Gosh, you know that. Work, home, kids, spouses, responsibilities, maintenance on the car, whatever it is. I'm also exhausted. I want to just sit back for 20 minutes. I need time for myself. So we can get carried away and lost in busyness. So for them, having a little bit of a routine is going to help them. They build that now in treatment or outpatient. That'll help them when they're completely reintegrated so that they've already got that system built and that routine is there. Every morning for 15 minutes is my recovery time, my reflection time, my breathing time, whatever it is. And as the family members and loved ones of an addict, it's super important to respect their sobriety. I think it's easy for us to just say, "Oh, do you have to go to a meeting today? Like you went last night. Can't you just skip this one?" It's very easy to do that to them. And for us, it doesn't feel like that big of a deal. It's just one meeting. Who cares? Relax. You're being ridiculous. For them, I'm going to tell you this. For them, it could very well be the difference of life or death. It could very well, that one meeting could be the difference between sobriety and returning to usage. And it is that extreme and serious. So for us, it's like going to the gym. Oh, I mean, no big deal. Go tomorrow, right? Nothing's going to happen. It's not the same for them when it comes to their sobriety, their routines, their meetings, their sponsors. This I want you to think is life or death. This I want you to think of insulin for a diabetic. It is life or death, and it's not optional. And it's not like, skip today. We can't do that. So it's very important to respect all aspects of their sobriety. Another great tool, according to the list, to this model, is having a gratitude list. I love gratitude, and I always tell people go basic. I got 10 fingers. I got glasses. My eyes aren't the best, but I got two eyes. Okay. I'm very grateful to have two eyes. I have all my fingers. I have all my toes. I have arms and legs. Grateful for these thumbs. These thumbs and these pinkies do a lot more than you think. So go basic. I have water. I have shoes. I have somewhere to sleep. I'm grateful for my glasses. If I didn't have these glasses, it would practically be like having no eyes. So I tell them I always recommend just go super basic. We don't have to talk about anything grandiose. And if you just think about the basics, your heart will flood with gratitude. Imagine if you didn't have your legs. Imagine if you didn't have your arms, or if you're missing your thumbs, or whatever it is. Imagine if you didn't have these things. Gosh, your gratitude just grows. Because I know when I see someone walking down the street, maybe they're blind and they have a cane. That's really one of the very rare moments that I stop and I think, God, oh my God, that must be a tough life. I can't even imagine what it's like to be blind, not to be able to jump in my car whenever I want, or to see a sunset, or to look at a loved one's face. So really just being grateful for the basics help reframe ourselves and our life as well. Therapy, going to group meetings, staying on routine, staying in schedule is also in here, and having an emergency action plan. We want a backup plan. So plan A, plan B, plan C, maybe plan D. We need to be very diverse and overly prepared. That is the way we're going to succeed with helping to prevent relapse. And it's very important because, like I said before, what if you only have one person to call and it's your sponsor and they don't pick up? Their phone died, or they're in a restaurant and it's on silent, and you didn't have that one person. You only had one person, one plan. What now? We're less susceptible to the elements if we're overly prepared. So that is what we talked about in group today. And it's so important as family members and loved ones of addicts to be versed in some of the challenges that they face so you can support them in helpful and meaningful ways. You can participate, encourage them in healthy ways. And the more aware we are of relapse, I think the more we are able to understand and also cope. Because as a family member, it's hard to cope with your loved one relapsing. It feels like everything's restarting. You're going to have to go through everything you went through all over again. And you don't even think that you can do that. You don't have enough strength left in you to do this again. But if we look at certain models like Dr. Marlot's, and we understand that it's a high risk within the first year, it's practically guaranteed that they will in the first year. And remember, every time they relapse, that year starts over. So if they had 9 months clean and relapsed, we're starting on one again. And we got to build that up to the 1 year mark again before we're really can relax just slightly. Because those stats that I gave you in the beginning, 95% relapse rate for opioids in the first year, alcohol stats, all of those, some of those numbers drop to 40% in the second year. So it's critical in the first year and crucial in the second year. But for us to understand that, we can also manage our own emotions and our own response to the situation a lot better the more we understand it. So if we remember this model and we think, okay, it's just a lapse, let's get ourselves back on track. It's not the end of the world. We ate a cookie. Okay, that's fine. Let's get back in there. Let's eat a salad. Let's go to the gym. We'll go together and it's not a big deal. We're not going to make it the end of the world. So that is what I have for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching and being with me. And I'll see y'all next week. Bye.